Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. He told me, "You were never really part of the business." So I smiled, nodded, and waited until he left his ledger open. You'd think after 32 years of marriage, he'd at least pretend to thank me for keeping the company alive. But no. Apparently, being the woman behind the spreadsheets meant I was invisible, not irreplaceable, not even essential, just background noise to his real work. My name is Eleanor Brandt. I'm 58. And until last fall, I thought I'd retire at 70 with a firm handshake and a modest pension, maybe take a cruise alone, or finally finish the quilt I started in my 30s. I'd spent 2 decades as the quiet arm of Brandt and Associates, a boutique interior design consultancy in Stamford that my husband, Carl, insisted he built from scratch. But let me tell you something about scratch. It doesn't file your taxes on time. It doesn't renegotiate vendor contracts in the middle of a recession. And it sure as hell doesn't stay up till 3 a.m., reconciling budget overruns from his ridiculous rooftop lighting schemes. Scratch had a name. It was mine. I never asked for credit. I'm not flashy like Carl. He could sell elegance to a plumber and charm his way out of overdue invoices. But I was the one they called when a designer flaked or when an invoice got mysteriously padded. I kept things clean, organized, quiet. Until I saw the emails. The first one was titled Gala Outfit. Bold, sloppy, forwarded to our shared desktop by mistake. I was in the office late, crunching quarterly projections when it blinked open. There she was, Marcy, in a skin-tight black dress that didn't say assistant so much as auditioning for a cliché. She was 28. She still used emojis in subject lines. I scrolled. There were dinners, hotels, selfies at a trade show I didn't even know he attended. And then I saw the calendar entry. Meeting, tell L, clean exit plan. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even later. I just looked around the office, our office, with its glass partitions and neutral tones I helped pick out. I remembered the little storage room that used to be my desk when we started, when we still brought instant coffee in a thermos and hoped clients wouldn't notice. And I sat back. He wanted a clean exit? Fine. But it wouldn't be his. He waited until the end of the quarter to tell me, said it like a dentist delivering bad news, factual, detached, mildly inconvenienced. "I think it's time we restructured," Carl said, not looking at me. "Streamline things. You've done great work, but we've grown. I need someone with a fresher outlook." Marcy stood behind him with a tablet, pretending to take notes. She wore red that day, lipstick to match. I asked, "Fresher?" Carl blinked, confused I wasn't making this easier. "You're brilliant, Elle. Really. But the industry's changing. Digital platforms, visual identity, Gen Z expectations. We need someone more aligned with where things are headed. Someone who sends you selfies in hotel robes?" He flushed, barely. "I'm offering a severance," he said stiffly. 3 months. And of course, you'll keep your stake until we finalize the buyout. My stake, I repeated. You mean the 38% I never signed over? He didn't answer. I didn't need him to. I went home to our quiet beige house, the one with the open floor plan he used to brag about, like I didn't design the layout while he was on site visits. I poured myself tea, not wine. I needed my brain clear. Then I opened his laptop. He never changed the password. Inside was everything. P and L sheets, project forecasts, even a pitch deck for a new luxury client he planned to land through Marcy's millennial reach. I studied the slides. They were good, Slick. But the numbers were wrong. Overpromised, underdelivered, and missing a huge chunk of operating costs. Me. I copied the file. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't walking away because he wanted to relive his 20s. He wanted fresh. I'd show him rebirth. Psst. That weekend, I drove to a diner on the north end of town, the one with too much chrome and bottomless coffee. And I waited. At exactly 11:30, Linda Raskin slid into the booth across from me. She was one of our longest-standing clients, a commercial real estate developer with a sharp tongue and sharper taste. "You're the last person I expected to call," she said, eyeing me over the rim of her cup. "I'm starting something new," I told her, quietly. Linda raised an eyebrow. "Carl, no?" I smiled. "Not yet, but I have numbers." She didn't look at the pitch deck I slid her way. She looked at me. "You were always the one who fixed things," she said finally. "I like that you never pretended to be charming." "That's because I'm not." "Exactly." She took the file. In the following weeks, I met with 2 more legacy clients I'd personally smoothed contracts for when Carl was off sipping cocktails at design expos. One of them, a boutique hotel chain owner, said bluntly, "If you run the budget, I'm in." I didn't even have a company name yet, but I had 3 signed letters of intent. I called it EB Collective, quiet, simple, initials only. I rented a co-working suite with warm light and muted walls. Nothing showy, just solid, like me. Then I emailed Carl my resignation from my marriage, not the business. The divorce papers arrived faster than expected. Carl was offended I'd beat him to it. He tried to lowball the asset division, claiming, "You never really did client-facing work." My lawyer, a whip-thin woman named Bernice with eyes like a hawk, laughed. "So we're pretending accounting isn't labor now?" Carl flinched in court, especially when we submitted a timeline of vendor negotiations, P&L reconciliations, and emails where clients asked for me by name. He offered a new deal by week's end. Full equity payout, no alimony, no contention. Just silence. I signed. Because I wasn't coming for his money. I was coming for his relevance. He announced his engagement to Marcy 3 weeks after the papers were final. Posted a photo on the company's Instagram, her in white, him in linen, both looking like extras in a lifestyle blog nobody asked for. But what Carl didn't post was the email from Raskin Group backing out of their next contract, or the polite but firm notice from Westwood Suites redirecting their account to EB Collective, or the slow hemorrhage of trust when vendors realized I took the books, and the ethics, with me. I never went public, never called him out. But people talk. And when they talk about Carl now, they say, "It's not the same without Eleanor." Sometimes they say it to his face. And that's just the beginning. The first time I saw Carl after the divorce, he looked older. Not dramatically so, but there was something about the way his shirt bunched at the shoulders, like it no longer fit quite right. And the confident stride he used to have had a slight delay, like he'd rehearsed it in the mirror and was trying too hard to look unaffected. We ran into each other at the Mayfield launch party, a mixed-use space project I had secretly been consulting on for weeks. They hadn't announced it publicly yet, and he assumed it was still his to lose. "Oh," he said, stopping short near the hors d'oeuvres table. "You're here." I smiled. "Linda invited me." He looked around like someone had broken an unspoken rule. "You're consulting?" "Not exactly," I replied, sipping sparkling water. "I'm directing operations." His jaw tensed. "Funny, they never mentioned that." I tilted my head. "Guess you're not copied on everything anymore." He didn't respond. But his date, Marcy, came fluttering up seconds later, wine in one hand, phone in the other. "Babe, should we post a pic? The lighting's perfect." Carl didn't answer her either. I excused myself before the silence turned into something pathetic. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I regretted seeing him, but because I realized I felt nothing. Not bitterness, not triumph. Just peace. And that meant I was finally ready to win. Starting EB Collective wasn't glamorous. My first office was a converted storage room in a co-working space above a yoga studio. The paint peeled slightly near the windows, and the heating clicked like it had asthma. But it had light, and it had a door that locked with my name on it. I hired one part-time assistant, Liana, a single mum in her 30s who was learning QuickBooks online and apologized too much. She reminded me of myself when I started, undercredited and overqualified. We made a good team. The first 6 months, I kept my head down. No press, no launches, no glossy website with design disruptor quotes in cursive fonts. Just work. We took on 3 commercial clients and 1 high-end residential, all word of mouth. All people who trusted my ability to deliver on budget, without fluff. Carl, meanwhile, went big. I watched from a distance as he partnered with an influencer to redesign an upscale wine bar in Brooklyn, the kind of place that confused minimalist shelving with personality. He ran a full-page ad in a trade magazine. I even heard he'd hired a brand strategist to refresh the look of Brandt and Associates. New logo, new tagline. Tradition meets tomorrow. But old habits die hard. Within 4 months, 2 of their long-term vendors filed complaints about unpaid invoices, and an intern leaked a memo online about toxic creative culture. One of those vendors, a custom cabinetry firm out of Westchester, emailed me. Subject line: "Are you taking new accounts?" I replied, "Always." So, one afternoon, Liana peeked her head into my office. "There's a man in the lobby. He doesn't have an appointment." I sighed. "Name?" He said just Henry. My heart caught. Henry Bouchard had been our first client at Brandt and Associates. He was the one who took a chance on Carl back when we were running the business from our garage. He'd built an empire of specialty cafes across the Northeast and trusted us with every new concept. I hadn't seen him in over a year. I stood slowly, smoothed my blouse, and stepped into the lobby. Henry looked older, yes, but still sharp-eyed, still in his signature navy peacoat and scarf. He smiled when he saw me. "I had to come see it for myself," he said. "See what?" "That you're actually free." I gestured to the modest office. "It's not much." He looked around, nodded approvingly. "It's enough. You always understood what things really cost. Time, patience, loyalty." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folder. "This is a redesign for my next flagship cafe. Brandt pitched me last week. It was glossy, but cold." He handed me the folder. "I want you to counter." Issy. That night, I sat on my couch in pajamas, tea steaming beside me, Henry's folder open across my lap. He hadn't said it outright, but it was clear. This was a test. The budget Carl had proposed was bloated. Too much emphasis on imported finishes, not enough attention to operational flow. It looked like something you'd stage for a photo, not somewhere a barista could actually work. So I got to it. 3 days later, I delivered a plan. Lean, beautiful, and smart. I even ran shadow diagrams to help with seasonal light flow, something I knew Henry cared about, but Carl never understood. The deal was signed that week. Liana cried, "I didn't. I just bought us both new desks." Carl didn't reach out, but I heard about the fallout from Linda. "Word is, he thought Henry was a sure thing," she said over lunch. Threw a fit in the middle of a planning meeting. Accused Marcy of leaking files. Did she? Linda shrugged. Does it matter? You've already won. No, I said quietly. Not yet. Winning wasn't about stealing clients. It was about becoming someone who didn't need to prove anything anymore. But I wasn't quite there yet. Because beneath the calm exterior, there was still one thing I wanted back. My name. A few weeks later, I filed for a DBA change. Not just for EB Collective, for myself. I dropped the Brant. Legally, officially. My maiden name, Eleanor Miles, returned to every letterhead, every invoice, every email signature. It was a small thing, but it felt like oxygen. When I clicked Save on the new branding package, my fingers shook. It wasn't about spite. It wasn't about rejection. It was about truth. Because I wasn't his anymore. And honestly, I never really had been. Months passed. We grew. Liana went full-time. We hired a freelance designer. I even got invited to speak on a panel about ethical contracting in boutique firms. At the end of the session, a young woman, couldn't have been more than 24, came up and said, "You make me believe I don't have to pick between being nice and being respected." I smiled. You don't. She laughed. I applied to Brandt and Associates last year. The interview was rough. I'm not surprised. He said I was too methodical. I raised an eyebrow. That's usually code for you made him nervous. We exchanged cards. 2 months later, she joined our team. I sometimes passed the old office downtown. The windows were still tinted. The brass logo still shined. But fewer lights were on. And more often than not, the reception desk sat empty. People used to say Carl walked into a room like he owned it. Now I heard he cancelled meetings last minute, that he blamed staff turnover on generational entitlement, that he insisted on being CC'd on every email, like a man desperate not to be forgotten. Poetic, isn't it? The man who told me I was never really part of the business, now scrambling to keep his together. And the woman he underestimated. She was just getting started. I never planned to attend the awards dinner. Those industry galas always bored me. A sea of recycled speeches, cheap wine poured into expensive glasses, and egos clinking louder than the silverware. But when the organizer called to say EB Collective had been nominated for Excellence in Client Integrity, I couldn't help but laugh. That was a category now? Apparently it was. Apparently, people had started noticing the firms who didn't just sell glossy renderings and inflated promises. Apparently, being trustworthy had become rare. "Please consider attending," the woman said over the phone. "You're an example a lot of young designers talk about." That part stopped me. Not the award, not the recognition, but the idea that someone, somewhere, might feel less invisible because I existed. I told her I'd think about it. Carl showed up in my inbox 2 days later. Subject: Congratulations. Body: Saw the nomination. Impressive. Didn't think you'd keep it going this long. But good for you. C: No signature. No warmth. Just that smug little undertone he always used when he thought I should be flattered. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. Because for once, his condescension didn't land. It just passed through me. Like wind through a house that no longer had holes. I printed it, folded it, slipped it into a drawer. Not as a trophy, as a fossil. Proof that he had once existed in my story, but no longer defined it. I wore a slate blue dress to the awards. Simple lines. No sparkle. Just soft elegance and a pair of pearl earrings my mother left me when she passed. Liana came with me. She wore black and burgundy, nervous as hell, grinning too hard. When they called our name, she squeaked. I didn't. I just stood, smoothed the hem of my dress, and walked. The applause was warm, sincere. A few people stood. I wasn't famous, but I was respected. I didn't give a speech, I just nodded. Sometimes dignity is louder than any words. Carl was in the fourth row. I didn't look at him. But Liana told me later his hands never stopped moving, adjusting his tie, checking his phone, tugging at his cuff. That was his tell. He only fidgeted when he realized the spotlight wasn't his. A week later, I got a call from Trident Development Group, a high-end firm that worked mostly with international hotel chains, big budget, global reach, known for being ruthless in negotiation. I heard about you through Henry, the woman on the phone said. He said, and I quote, "She'll give you exactly what you need, and not a dollar more." I chuckled. That's my brand. We're interviewing a few firms for our upcoming downtown project. Would you be interested? Yes. I didn't hesitate. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I needed to one-up Carl, but because I'd built something real, something lean and honest and human, and I wanted to see how far it could go. The interview was scheduled for the following Thursday. And guess who was also on the list? Brandt and Associates. Shh. I prepped hard. Not because I was worried, but because I wanted to walk into that room knowing I had earned every second of their attention. The day of the meeting, I wore navy slacks and a crisp cream blouse, hair tied back, glasses, no makeup except lip balm. Clean, sharp, present. The conference room was on the 17th floor of a downtown high-rise. Glass walls, filtered sunlight, a single pitcher of lemon water. Carl arrived before me. I saw him through the glass. He looked up, startled, when I walked in. And then he looked down again. Marcy wasn't with him. I took my seat. The Trident team, 2 women and a man, entered 2 minutes later. All business. They didn't ask about our past. They didn't care. They asked about process, about transparency, about how we manage budgets, conflicts, expectations. Carl went first. He launched into a sleek presentation with mood boards, projections, and vague promises of artful synergy. When it was my turn, I didn't open a slide deck. I pulled out 3 handouts, one for each of them, printed, annotated, clean. Here's our average margin of error over the past 6 projects. Here are testimonials. And here's a sample cost adjustment plan for contingencies based on regional supplier data. They flipped pages. I waited. No ego, just numbers. Afterward, we shook hands. No words exchanged between me and Carl. But as I left the building, I passed the restroom corridor and paused. From inside, I heard a man sigh loudly. I kept walking. They called 3 days later. "We're going with you," the woman said. "Your proposal was honest, and frankly, we're tired of men who don't listen." I smiled. "We listen. That's kind of our thing." The contract was the biggest of my career. I framed the first deposit check and hung it in the office hallway. Carl called the following week. I let it ring. Then I blocked the number. Hey. By summer, our team had doubled. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were leading. EB Collective became a name people whispered in rooms Carl used to own. Young designers emailed me asking for mentorship. Vendors prioritized us without having to be chased. Even former clients of Carl's reached out quietly, like exiles who didn't want to admit they'd been wrong. Some I welcomed, others I didn't. Revenge isn't always about taking everything. Sometimes it's about choosing what and who you'll never let in again. That's the power he never understood. I didn't want his world. I wanted mine. And I had built it, brick by brick, ledger by ledger, kindness by kindness. It took nearly a year, but one day, Liana walked into my office holding her phone and said, "You're going to want to see this?" It was an article from a trade publication. Brandt and Associates to downsize following client exodus. The write-up was brief, carefully worded, but the tone was unmistakable. The firm had lost 3 major clients in 6 months. Internal restructuring, market shifts, leadership, recalibration. Marcy had apparently left to pursue personal projects. Carl remained on sabbatical. I read the whole thing twice. Then I folded the printout and placed it in the same drawer where his old email still lived. Not as a trophy, but as a chapter closed. One Friday evening, I locked the office early, walked out with my coat unbuttoned, hair loose, breeze on my face. At the corner cafe, I ordered a cinnamon latte and sat by the window, watching people rush into their weekends. I felt still. Not stuck. Not sidelined. Still, like someone who finally knew the weight of her own name. A little girl at the next table dropped her juice box. Her mother knelt, flustered, mopping it up with napkins. "Don't cry," the mother whispered. "We'll fix it." The girl looked up, wide-eyed, brave. Something in me softened. We all spill. We all learn to clean up. Some of us, like me, build entire futures from the cloth we used to be stepped on. And we make them shine. The funny thing about revenge is that it doesn't feel how you expect it to. I thought I'd feel fire. Triumphant, giddy, unstoppable. But what came was quieter. Like closing a door you forgot had been open. Like putting down a bag you carried too long without realizing how heavy it was. I didn't want Carl to suffer anymore. I just wanted him to not matter. And slowly he didn't. The more I leaned into what I was building, not from spite, but from purpose, the more I realized the story wasn't about him leaving. It was about me staying honest, staying present, staying whole. And that wholeness had become its own kind of magnet. Clients trusted me. Vendors respected me. Young women in the industry asked how I had done it, how I'd stood up without raising my voice, how I'd left a man and taken back a name without burning everything down. "Wasn't it lonely?" one intern asked after shadowing me for a month. I thought about it. It was, I admitted. But then it was freeing. And then it wasn't lonely anymore. It was mine. She looked puzzled. "You'll understand," I said gently, "when you stop needing someone to see you just to feel real." That spring, I bought a tiny cottage just outside of Stamford, 2 bedrooms, wooden floors that creaked in the morning, a garden overrun with lavender and the occasional squirrel. It wasn't grand, but it was warm. Light loved it, and so did I. I painted one of the spare bedrooms soft yellow and turned it into a reading room. No desk, no emails, just shelves, a wide chair, and the feeling that I could finally exhale. Every Sunday I baked, just for me. Cinnamon bread, apple galette. Sometimes even my old mother's cornbread recipe, which I'd nearly forgotten in the noise of invoices and launch meetings. The kitchen smelled like memory, like something I hadn't let myself feel in years. One afternoon, I received a letter. A real one, handwritten, no return address, just my name, Eleanor Miles, and a Stamford postmark. Inside was a single card. "You were always better at this than me." No signature, but I knew the handwriting. I didn't feel satisfaction, just pity. And then gratitude. Because I'd once thought I needed his acknowledgement to feel whole. But now it felt like someone knocking on a door I no longer lived behind. At EB Collective, we began a mentorship program for second career women. Women over 40 who had left jobs, marriages, lives, and wanted to re-enter the workforce with dignity and guidance. We took on 4 women that first year. One of them, Natalie, had once been a receptionist at a bank. After raising 3 kids and surviving a bad divorce, she said, "I don't even know what I'm good at anymore." We gave her spreadsheets. She lit up. "I forgot how satisfying it is when the numbers match," she said, eyes welling up. I smiled. "Welcome home." People say legacy is what you leave behind, but I think it's what you build that doesn't fall apart when you leave the room. It's the calm you create when others feel safe working with you. It's the absence of fear. It's the presence of trust. And that is something Carl never understood. He thought power came from being the loudest voice. I found it in being the last one standing. And the one who stood with others. Ha! On the second anniversary of EB Collective, we held a small celebration. Just team, friends, and the clients who'd been with us since day one. We rented the back garden of a local cafe. Fairy lights, mason jars, big bowls of shared food. No speeches, just laughter and the quiet clinking of forks. Toward the end of the night, as people trickled out, Liana raised a glass. "To Eleanor," she said, "who taught me that sometimes the best revenge is a beautiful, ordinary life." Everyone clapped. I laughed. But I didn't cry until I got home. Later that summer, I ran into Carl again. At a hardware store, of all places. He was in the paint aisle, squinting at swatches. Alone. No Marcy. No blazer. Just a man in a wrinkled polo holding a list that looked like it had been scribbled in panic. He turned and saw me. Froze. I nodded politely. No smile, no gloat. Just civility. He blinked, cleared his throat. "Eleanor?" "My name's Miles now," I said gently. He looked like he wanted to say something more. Maybe an apology. Maybe a rewrite of history. But I walked away before he could. Because the story was no longer his to tell. On the last page of my old notebook, the one where I'd once jotted all the firm's expenses, vendors, and tax notes, I wrote one line. "You were never really part of the business." And then below it, in pen, "You were the business. Now you're the future." And then I closed it. For good. Oh. I am 60 now. I run a thriving practice. I mentor women who remind me of the girl I once was, quiet, methodical, overlooked. I no longer chase recognition. I no longer answer his emails. I no longer bake for approval. I bake because the house smells better that way. I know the value of my own labor. And every client who walks through my door knows it too. I am not angry anymore. I am not hurt. I am whole. I am home.